What's one way that women are still getting financially screwed in 2025?
It's about 70% of millennial men say that they are in charge of the long-term financial planning, and 68% of the respondents said it's because they want to be in charge of the money in the event of a divorce.
Amanda Holden is here today. After spending the first part of her career in investment management, she decided that helping rich men get richer wasn't her life's calling. So she quit with the goal of including women in conversations about investing and building wealth.
The best advice, all roads always lead to diversification.
I do the investing for our family, and I'm so proud. Like, I feel like such a badass.
We are in right now a very volatile period in the market. Why does volatility happen? It's buying and selling that pushes prices higher or lower. An even easier way to say it is that it's vibes, right?
What's the dumbest piece of financial advice you've ever heard someone give?
Oh, there's so many.
Welcome to the Hello 7 podcast. That's 7 as in 7 figures. I'm your host, Rachel Rogers.
Welcome back to the Hello 7 podcast, and I'm so excited for today's episode because we have an amazing entrepreneur, writer, speaker, founder, and friend. Amanda Holden is here today. Get excited. So let me tell you a little bit about Amanda. After spending the first part of her career in investment management, she decided that helping rich men get richer wasn't her life's calling, funnily enough. So she quit to start her business, Invested Development, with the goal of including women in conversations about investing and building wealth. And also, she is the person who taught me how to invest, okay? Spoiler alert. She has now taught over 20,000 students, mostly women, how to invest. You may also know her as Dumpster Doggy on the internet, where she shares fun, free investing education and her best Trashion outfits, okay? Her forthcoming book, How to Be a Rich Old Lady, will be out in January 2026 with Simon & Schuster, and I'm so excited. I cannot wait to read it. Yay, Amanda! I'm so glad you're here.
Oh my God, thank you for having me.
This is going to be so much fun. So my first question for you is, how did the woman that we all know and love as Dumpster Doggy start in investment banking? Tell me how those two things don't seem to go together.
Yeah, no, it was, looking back, it was a real spiritual mismatch for me. The answer to why I ended up working in finance is really just because I was taking the steps I thought that I needed to take.
Yes.
You graduate from school with degrees in economics and communications, you get your job in finance, you do the things that you think that you're supposed to do to be on this career ladder of success. But it took only a couple of years before I realized that something was really wrong. And in many ways, I'm grateful that I knew so vividly, it was in Technicolor for me, that this was wrong, and that I was going to need to do something different.
Yes.
It did not help that I graduated into the 2008 recession, and so I started working in finance. I started working in investing, where I was on the front lines working with our high net worth clients, answering questions about the market, being on the receiving end of what was. It was a highly emotional experience for people that were watching their portfolios drop in value to the tune of over 50% over the course of a couple of months. And so it really just radicalized me. It really made me question not only my path, but also the finance industry in general. And then as I kept digging, even capitalism writ large, what am I doing here? But it also drove me to make a change within, I was there for about 6 years. And so at about the 5-year mark, I knew that I just needed to change my life and do everything possible to get out, to leave, to walk away. And so, which by the way, this was the time that I got super scrappy and I acquired the nickname Dumpster Doggy. Which is something that has just followed me for now years and years. And every single business coach I have ever met with is like, we got to do something about Dumpster Doggy. But I'm
obsessed with that.
Okay, good.
I'm a business coach and I'm a big fan of Dumpster Doggy.
All right. Well, that's all I need.
I think we need merch. You know what I mean? But also, like, tell us the background on Dumpster Doggy. Like,
okay. Yes. So I made like a January 1st decision to get out of finance.
Yes.
And so it was like, I am going to do everything I can until I'm walking out of these doors for one last time.
Yes.
And so what that meant was saving as much money as possible. You know, I was highly compensated compared to a lot of my peers in my early and mid 20s. And so that was not the issue. But I was also, you know, a 20-something dumbass living in San Francisco with my big girl paychecks and lighting money on fire to have a good time. Like that was my MO. And so I turned off the spigot. I said, no more. There will be no more of this. I love spending money, but I think that what waits for me on the other side will be so much more gratifying than, you know, any single purchase, any drug, any drink, anything. Any of my favorite coping mechanisms at the time. Like I was like, I have to get beyond this. I have to get out of the work consumption loop that I was really stuck in. And I didn't have those words at the time, but I knew that something was off. And so I just got so scrappy. And so I did all of the normal things you would expect to stop spending money, just like really reevaluating my spending. But I also, and this was a suggestion of one of my friends that I worked with at the time. She was like, Mandy, have you ever considered Freeganism? And I was like, well, do tell. What is Freeganism? And Freeganism is a lifestyle whereby you consume what is made free and available to you. And we were kind of being silly, but her point was, you know, we work with all of these men. We didn't get free food. It wasn't like Google, but like there was food everywhere. She was like, why don't you just like live off the excess of these guys? Because she knew I was trying to save as much money as possible to walk away.
Yes.
And so that's what I started doing. So I would like lap the building every morning just to see if there were any leftover team bagels, which, like, to be clear, not my team. Bagels. I would like every Friday before fridge clean out, I would, go and like rescue any of like the leftover yogurts. And take it. I was just like being, again, just like
a dumpster dog.
And so and at this time I was in a group that was pretty much dominated by men. And so I had only let a few of my coworkers in on what I was doing. I certainly didn't need my boss to know that I had some grand plan to exit. And so, but my friends, a couple of the guys that were on my team, they knew what I was up to. And so they started calling me Dumpster Dog. They started calling me Dumpster Doggy. That was their nickname for me. And I think...
And we thank them.
I think it was loving, but like, you know...
Not certain.
I can't know their intentions.
I love it. So that work consumption loop that you're talking about, there's so many times where we think and we're told, I was told the same thing, like, go work for a law firm where you're going to make, you know, 150 starting and then 200, blah, blah, blah. And you'll make so much money, right? So I applied to a lot of those jobs and I'm very grateful that I didn't get them, right? That didn't work out for me and I wound up in a clerkship instead. And then after that went solo. But like that could have definitely possibly been my path. But what I found among my friends who did do that, and it sounds like that's what you were doing too, is like, you have this job, it's completely miserable, but like, it's impressive. It's an impressive career. Other people are impressed. Your parents are impressed, right? And so then it's like you spend all of the money you're making, like the money you're supposed to be using to pay down your student loans early and like save and invest or whatever, you're spending it just to cope with having to show up to this job every day.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying? Like basically to make yourself it's like a personality transplant that you have to do every day when you walk in the office. And so like you just spend all this money coping every time you're outside those walls, or even when you're inside, right? Like with fancy lunches and expensive apartments and just like what other shit can I buy to distract myself from the fact that I hate this job, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I get that 100%. Like sometimes it doesn't actually turn out to be the savings that we think it's going to be. Well, unless you practice Freeganism, which actually what you're describing is something that I have done. I did it also close to Wall Street, but not where you were. So I used to work for the New York City Rescue Mission.
Okay.
Which is a homeless shelter. And it's a homeless shelter and soup kitchen and provides drug addiction rehabilitation, right? And so I was an assistant to the executive director, and we got food from all over the city donated every single day. And so like lunch, all of this, it's a soup kitchen. So it was all these meals were provided. And so I figured out that like we had lunch for free every day because of that. But I figured out that if I stayed just a little bit late every day, I could also get dinner. You know what I mean? I wasn't doing it because I didn't want to spend my salary. I was doing it because I didn't have enough of a salary to actually, buy dinner, pay rent, all the things. And so I would stay late. Like once me and a few coworkers figured this out, we'd stay late every day and get free dinner. And so I literally never had food in my apartment. Like never. The fridge literally was bare.
Just
there
like
was no.
a bottle of Tabasco and like a tall boy.
You could have taken it out of there. I had a George Foreman grill. Occasionally on the weekends, I would buy myself like some groceries or usually on the weekends, I'd go to a friend's house and see if I could eat there for free. So I have practiced. I'm a Freeganism practitioner, or at least a former.
Yeah, sure. And so many folks that have ever had to make it work on a budget. I mean, they know what this is.
Exactly. But I love giving it a name and also opting in. Like it doesn't have to be something that just comes, it could be something that you're like, you know what? I just want to see what it feels like to consume less.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Yes, absolutely. And
listen up. If you're tired of setting the same income goals year after year and still coming up short, it's time to change the game. You know you're meant for more, but right now your business isn't moving like it should. You've got the talent, the skills, the ambition, but your bank account isn't reflecting that. That's where the Make Money Moves Challenge comes in. For 5 days, I'm giving you the exact strategies, mindset shifts, and money-making moves that have helped me and thousands of other entrepreneurs break out of the feast or famine cycle and start stacking real wealth. No more scrambling to hit your revenue goals, and no more waiting for the perfect time to go all in. You're getting daily action steps that will have you making more money immediately. This isn't a fluffy feel-good challenge. This is about building a business that actually pays you what you deserve. So are you in? If so, join me for our next challenge. Go to hello7.co/challenge to sign up now.
Right now we are in a moment where folks do, I think, feel sensitive about having their small daily joys taken away.
Yes.
And I really get that. It's been a really tough 5 years to be alive. And I would never want anybody to deprive themselves of their daily joy. That being said, spending is also so frictionless and can be so unmemorable, and it's just so easy to spend. And there are a lot of really powerful forces out there that want us to spend every last dollar that we earn. And so I just also really enjoy going through energetic seasons where sometimes I really clamp it down and I'm very serious about my money and it almost feels like a challenge. And then other times I'm just like a little bit more loosey-goosey. Yeah. And the everything in moderation, people are going to come for me on that one. They don't like that. But for me, it's what works. Like sometimes I'm, swinging naked from a lamppost and at a San Francisco street rave, and other times I'm like at home watching Netflix under the covers. And that's just like, to me, that's how life works. And so that was like a real season of just, seeing money as a tool to get me out of a situation and doing everything in my power to treat it as such.
Yes, exactly. I did the same thing when I wanted to start my own business. I had a house and I rented out my house so that they could cover the mortgage, the tenants. And I moved into a basement apartment, with like secondhand furniture that I bought off Craigslist, and just cut all the expenses so that I could, save up enough to start this business. Yeah. And just be actually able to not replace my job when I left that clerkship. And that's basically what I did. And it was totally worth it. I got rid of my nice car, like all of that stuff. I don't know, something about it. When you have the right attitude about it, it can be cleansing. Yeah, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm in a season like that now, where I'm just like, I don't want to spend none of my money. I'm like, no, I don't want to pay for that.
Right. Well, especially when you see who this money is going to.
Yes, exactly. And it's also too, I think because of seasons, that makes sense, right? Like I've had a season where I bought a lot of clothes. I bought a lot of things because I was like new to money. And when you're new to money, it's like, oh, I can buy shit I've never been able to afford before. I'm going for it. And so I bought investment properties. I made actually a lot of really good investments that have turned out to work out great. But I also bought a bunch of shit like clothes and shoes and bags and jewelry. And now I'm like, I don't need another thing for like the next decade. I have enough clothes to look fly. Literally, I have not worn anything new on this podcast, on speaking. In the last 2 years, I've not bought clothes. And it's just, I'm delighted because I just keep going through my closet like, oh, this is cute. I haven't looked at this in a while, you know? And I just keep finding stuff and I just shop my closet, you know? So it's fun. So yes, you don't always have to be, I'm definitely about like, live your life, have your pleasures. So if that's the season you're in, be in it. But the season I'm in right now is just like, hoarding my cash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, y'all can't have it. You know, I'm not spending it on none of this stuff.
Yeah. And I felt like it was very lucky for me to get to have the experience of like peeling out of that parking lot one last time.
Yeah.
Like office chair still spinning, you know, blasting Florence in the machine, like feeling like, okay, this was so worth it.
Yes.
And it is so worth it
Yes.
to make a sacrifice to actually get to the place where you're living a life you actually want to be living.
Yes. Okay. So you quit your job and then what happened?
And so I should have said this. Part of the reason I was saving so much is because I had no idea what to do next.
Yes.
Because I started working in investment management immediately after graduating school. I was there for almost 7 years by the time I quit. And really the only job skill I had developed, I guess, like 2 job skills, which were like talking about the investment markets and sucking up to rich men. Those were your skills. Those were my skills. And at the time I was like, well, I don't want to do either of those things ever again. And so I need to walk away and have some space to reevaluate. Right. Like looking back, I think it would have made sense for me to have a more creative path or a more creative career, but that's just not the way that it worked out for me. And so I wanted some space to figure it out. So I actually just left and was lucky enough to get to travel for a year. And
awesome.
and so this was in 2014. And so this was even before I had an Instagram, and my dad was like, what in the hell are you doing? And so I left and I started in New Orleans and basically worked my way down through Mexico, Central America, and South America, did a big loop, mostly all by bus, and then came back within the year. And it was during that time that like, I really thought I was leaving finance altogether, but this obnoxious idea kept gnawing away at the back of my skull. And it was just that I had also accumulated this very valuable skill.
Yes.
And I had been coaching my girlfriends through this information, helping them understand what they needed to do with their own investments. And I just felt like, okay, maybe my work here isn't done. And so over the course of that year, I resolved to come back to the States and basically, I didn't know that I would start my business right away. At first, I thought I would write.
Yes.
And so I came back, started writing a book, which like 10 years later is now coming into fruition. And so I started writing. I was blogging about investing, but also I was blogging about all sorts of financial topics. I was talking about beauty standards. I was talking about, the way that the finance industry is set up to screw your average person over.
Right.
And so I was doing a lot of blogging and writing, thinking that the end product would be a book that I could gift to the world and be like, okay, now for reals, I'm out.
Like, leave me alone. Yes.
This is my gift to you. And now I'm moving on. But what you learn in the process of like pursuing a nonfiction book deal is that you need an audience.
Yes.
They want you to have an idea and they want you to be able to write, but they really want you to be able to sell your own book.
Correct.
And so
because they are not going to sell it.
Yes, no, they are not. And so at this point I had the Dumpster Dog blog, which like very few people read. And so I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to do an audience. This was still like a little bit, I probably should have started social media so I could have grown up with social media, but it still just like wasn't quite registering to me how to use social media successfully because it was still mostly a personal or individual endeavor. Exactly. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start teaching. I actually think that teaching live, especially considering my job was being on the phones and meeting with clients, I think teaching live is actually going to be what works better for my students and for women that want to learn. And that was very much the case. There's something about trapping somebody in a room with you for an hour where they can't get away. That is
Yes.
quite conducive to learning in the way a blog post just isn't.
Yes.
And so that really started working. And that was the beginning of what is now my business, which is called Invested Development. But it is mostly live teaching, online teaching, workshops, and courses.
Yes.
And so it's not like I had some grand plan to be doing exactly this. Instead, as an entrepreneur, I just tried to listen to what people actually wanted.
Yes.
And follow that trail.
Yeah. And that makes sense. You matched your skill set with, and something that you were passionate about, which was helping other people get financially free and sort of like revealing some of the BS that you have seen, you know, and matching that with a need in the marketplace, which is that a lot of women don't know how to invest and that they're not even expected to invest, that we're not socialized to invest. I'm like, some of the research that I did for my book, We Shall All Be Millionaires, the amount of like women who give their investing decisions and their money decisions over to a man in their life. It doesn't even have to be a partner. It's like a brother, an uncle, like any man in the vicinity, you know, their neighbor, whatever, instead of trusting themselves, like, fuck that, you know? So that's smart, right? You match your skills with what's going on in the marketplace and a need that you can fill. Like, that's the best way to start a business, you know? Particularly if you're excited about it and it's something you're going to follow through with. Because if it's something you hate, then it's just another job you hate, right?
Absolutely. And what I will say is like, I really had this romantic idea of what being a writer was. I really wanted to be this like cool, mysterious writer chick. Like that's what I wanted. And so it felt like I was giving that up to pursue this other path. But ultimately it is what has given me all of the freedom I now have to pursue the best book deal possible.
Yes.
And so it all ended up working out, but it really did require me both understanding my own skill set and listening to what was really working for people, as opposed to trying to like, you know, keep shoving this like the written word down people's throat.
Yeah. I think having somebody, especially like you're incredibly entertaining, you know, and you're hilarious. Like I took your class. I was like, babe, I bought this investing class. Is what I said to my husband. I'm like, you want to watch it with me? Let's watch it. So he's like, okay. So he sits down with me. We're sitting in our kids' playroom. This is like many years ago.
Yeah.
I was before my book came out.
It was when I was still only teaching live, right?
Yes,
it was before
for
I had
sure.
even converted the course to video.
Yes,
so you were an early student.
I was an early student, and I think there was a couple of sessions. And so like the first one, and I bought a package where I got a one-on-one with you too at the end. And so I always buy VIP. That's just, I'm like, I'm a VIP. That's what it is. If there's a higher package, you're going to get me because I'm going to buy it. Yeah. Anyway, so I go to the class and it starts and you're hilarious and there's gifts and like you're teaching and there's like literally stock market charts, right? Like you're teaching us things, but you're also so funny and like so relatable. And the context is so relevant, you know, to like the people, the students, right? The women who are listening. So it was so great. It was like, I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I found you through Emma Patty.
Yeah.
That's how I found you.
Yeah.
Who was my copywriter for a while. Loved her. I'm so excited about her new book, Tilt. Y'all need to go.
Yeah. March 24th.
Oh my God.
Drops on
Get
March
ready. You're not ready. So anyway, so that was so amazing for me. And now 20,000 students, right? Like what is the marketing plan that generates 20,000 students? I'm sure people want to know.
Yeah. Well, I have just like been very lucky in that I have been able to grow an Instagram following that it's not the biggest Instagram following, but it is a very engaged and wonderful following. And I would say between like maybe 80 and 85% of my students come through Instagram.
Yeah.
And so first and foremost, you are building a platform. You are making yourself known as being a resource in one particular area of expertise. And so for me, like I always kind of wanted to talk about topics beyond investing.
Yes.
But I also understood that like hammering on the investing topic and being known as the investing person was going to not only get people to show up at my page for that particular reason, but also just to know that like, if and when they are ready, they know who to go to down the line.
Exactly.
And so it was both calculated and completely like, not calculated. I also like will make a dress out of Kraft cheese singles. I think there's like a Dolly Parton quote that's like, if you can get them to look, you can get them to listen. And so there's like a little bit of that happening over on the page, and just like trying to be silly and have fun. And I just like know people like they take their lives seriously, as they should, but like we also want to have fun, and
we want to be entertained and not bored all the time.
Totally.
Yes.
And so doing my best to like take this crusty topic and make it a little bit more fun and interesting and less intimidating. And then I also just have been both very lucky to have like a lot of support from my students, who my students tell all their friends.
Yes,
and their cousins
because the product is really good.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Then you get word of mouth.
Yeah. And then I've also been lucky to have a couple of strategic partnerships. Like I've partnered with the Financial Diet, which is a wonderful women's financial literacy and media company. And for a long time, I taught their investing courses. So I was just able to reach outside of like my bubble that is my social media. And so it's been a combination of those factors. But yeah, I've had online workshops where I've had thousands and thousands of students, mostly women.
Yeah.
But just really in general, people that have been left out of the conversations in these rooms. And so it's been a very cool journey.
Yes. I love it so much. Let's start here because it's International Women's Day today.
Yes.
Yay.
Happy IWD.
Happy IWD. So you're, of course, all about financial feminism. So what's one way women are, just one, that women are still getting financially screwed in 2025?
Okay.
What's your favorite way?
Where do we begin? Well, this is so funny. This is actually something I was talking about with Emma, our mutual friend, the other day. But, something that I have looked at quite a bit is why is it that women are relinquishing responsibility to the men in their lives?
Yes.
And I mean, I have just like nothing but empathy for women that are already carrying a great cognitive load in their homes. And if they have a person, anybody, a man often in their life who is willing to step up and take on one of those jobs, like when you are doing 1,000 shitty little jobs every week and somebody says that they will help with just one of them, like why wouldn't you say no?
Yeah.
Right. And so understanding that oftentimes the reason that women don't get involved in their family finances is because there is a real lack of legislative support for women and for families that leave women completely burned out and unable to take on one more job, especially if somebody is willingly going to take that off their plate.
Right.
And so I say that because like if you are somebody that is not taking that on right now, I completely understand why. There's a study that I think, maybe 70, I think it's about 70% of millennial men say that they are in charge of the long-term financial planning in their homes, which is still, that is a huge percentage of heterosexual couples.
And these are like young people now. Like the young people have adopted the same, like, strategy as their mothers, right?
Exactly. And, you think about that, and then you think about, you compare that to the second stat, which is that there was a UBS study that was done, and it was asking about the attitudes, like why is it that you as a man are taking financial responsibility in this family dynamic or in this relationship dynamic? And 68% of the respondents said it's because they want to be in charge of the money in the event of a divorce. And so it is not.
So they're like, I want to be mentally prepared or financially prepared for a divorce, but I'm fine with her not being prepared for a divorce.
Exactly. And so then this is what Emma and I were talking about. Emma basically saw this Reddit thread of men teaching other men who are also going through divorce how to hide their money in cryptocurrency, which by design is not traceable. And so
it's like they create new ways to financially screw us. Holy crap.
And so, and the reason I chose this is just because, like, I think that we are all very, like, aware of the ways in which the system is both sexist and racist and ableist. And we know these things, and the pay gap is not really improving. The pay gap transmutes into a wealth gap. Obviously, if the less money you have to invest, the less investments you have. And, you know, that's even kind of interesting about the comment you made about women being socialized or not socialized to invest, that is a part of it. Yes. But another part of it is that how much risk a person is willing to take is largely a function of their income, not their gender. Yeah. And so, said another way, women don't invest as much as men because women don't have as much money to invest. And so we're already, you know, starting behind. And then we are also thrown into these family dynamics where we are either too tired to take control of the family finances, or we believe on some cultural level that men are the ones that should be in charge. And we really have to ask the question, who does this benefit? Right. This compared with, like, narratives about, like, women be shopping, women can't be trusted with their money. Who is this benefiting? Yeah. Right. But
also be beautiful.
And also be beautiful.
Right? Like, so buy makeup, buy heels, buy wigs, buy weaves, buy whatever to make yourself stunning, because otherwise then we're not going to like you. But also, why are you so frivolous with your money? It's like, fuck you. Right. And this entire narrative, because it's all designed to, like, no matter what I do, I don't win. You know?
Well, I mean, like, how many, we're not some of the men in your life are going to be great with money, but not all of them. And you just can't risk not knowing.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, this is what drives me so nuts is men spend more, they splurge more, and they have more credit card debt. And yet it's the women who are often shopping for their entire families who are the ones that have the shopping problem, right? Yes. Like, this guy has $1,000 a month DraftKings habit, and, like, you're mad at me for getting
or a very expensive car
diapers at Target. Yeah,
exactly.
So, and we all spend and we all splurge, and it's not at the very least two heads are better than one. Yes. When it comes to making financial decisions. I've been so lucky to have been exposed to the lives of so many of my students. And what I can say with 100% certainty, having worked with thousands and thousands of women, is that women are getting the most bad financial advice from the men in their own families.
Wow. Don't listen to them.
or do, but, you know.
Well, empower yourself. Exactly. I have to say, like, when I figured out how to, like, put together my portfolio and decided, like, what ratios I was doing for each thing that I was investing in, and I had a financial planner, fired them, and started doing it myself, my returns were way better without the financial planner. And, you know, like, that, so that is my thing, like, in our household. And my husband does other parts of our finances. Like, he's like the tax guy. He's like super into the taxes, you know, and having tax strategy or whatever. But I do the investing for our family, and I'm so proud. Like, I feel like such a badass that I figured this out, you know, that I took classes, I learned from you, I've learned from other people, I've read books, I've done the things I needed to do to get empowered in this way. And it makes me feel like, okay, great, I really can create. Because as a business owner, right, you make a lot of money, and this is true for a lot of entrepreneurs. They make a lot of money, they just keep reinvesting in the business, or they just spend it as personal income. And they never have a strategy for diversifying, right? So it's like, your business is a great asset. I've not gotten better returns on anything else other than Hello7, right? Like, Hello7 has absolutely delivered the greatest returns of my life, you know, in terms of what I've invested and what I've gotten out, financially speaking, right? And otherwise. However, I don't want, like, if something happens or if I can no longer work or whatever, right? Like, you got to have other plans, right? So having other ways in which you're investing, you just feel so empowered. So now it's like, I have real estate. I have invested in startups that I've seen amazing. I have looked back on the last 10 years or 5 to 10 years that I've been actively investing in real estate, startups, and the stock market. And I'm like, holy shit. You're about that life. You know what I mean? Like, you're fucking good at this. And I feel so proud about that because I knew nothing about money. Investing was not a thing in my household because it was like, just trying to get by, right? Like we were just trying to survive the day, the week, the month. There was no thinking about the retirement.
Of course.
That's not even a thing, you know? And so like, that wasn't a question. It wasn't discussed in my household. So the fact that I figured it out, I'm so proud of that. And I want that for so many other people as well. So I want to know, what's the dumbest piece of financial advice you've ever heard someone give?
Oh, there's so many.
We've officially rescheduled ROI The Millionaire Summit 2025. Join me, Hello 7, and hundreds of your newest business besties in Huntington Beach, California from June 17th through the 19th for 3 days of high-impact, high-caliber fun. Let me tell you why ROI The Millionaire Summit is happening at the perfect time. June is the ultimate mid-year reset. It's your chance to pause, reflect, and redirect your energy for the months ahead. By the time the summer rolls around, you've had 6 months of wins, lessons, and challenges. That makes June the moment to evaluate what's working and ditch what's not, and pivot for even bigger success in the second half of the year. I'm so excited to invite you to ROI 2025 this summer to reconnect with your vision and take $1 million action with me. Come to dream bigger, move boldly, and reconnect with your purpose. So if you're ready to realign with your vision, sharpen your strategy, and set yourself up for massive wins, ROI is where you need to be. Head to hello7.co/ROI to grab your ticket.
And like my mind is just kind of like running through, even just in reference to what I just said about women getting bad advice from men in their own family. I mean, I have had students whose husband. I should probably stop bashing men at this point. But this is just who I work with, and these are the lived experiences of the students that I work with. But I have had a student whose husband drained his 401k, which she was a stay-at-home mom. So it was not his 401k, it was their 401k. Correct. And drained the 401k to put the money in cryptocurrency, which, as we know, has very volatile periods up and down. And when it went down, he panicked and he sold at a low. And so he basically gambled away the family retirement on cryptocurrency. And so, right, like this kind of like put it all in crypto energy has just been
all in crypto. Like I could understand experiment, like even like I've invested in startups, right? Yeah. That is risky. And so like, obviously I'm not going to put the lion's share of my portfolio in that, but I'm going to invest where I'm like, if I can lose this money, and I have, like they haven't all panned out, but several of them have panned out very well, So it's like, okay, great. But I also went in eyes wide open and knowing like my retirement is not based on this. This is just like bonus time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's like that sparkly clutch you take out on a Friday night. Like you got to be okay with leaving it in a taxi. Like you have to just know that
you're
gonna
lose it.
It could happen. So don't be too attached.
It's not your steady Eddie tote that you're going to throw everything in. You carry every day.
No. And so to segue into like, what is the worst advice, whether it's about crypto or a startup or any sort of investment where you are throwing it all in on something that is risky. I mean, that is the worst advice.
Yes.
The best advice, all roads always lead to diversification. And even hearing you describe how you've organized your financial life, you've got your business, you've got real estate, and you've got stock market investments. Like to me, like the visual I'm seeing is just these different pots of money overflowing.
Yes.
And like having multiple different pots overflowing is the way to go.
Yes.
And so even when you are investing in the stock market, doing so in a diversified way, buying hundreds or even thousands of companies using something like an index fund is generally considered to be the smartest and then safest.
Yes.
Way
and
to
easiest,
invest.
by
And
the way.
easiest.
Yes. Let it be easy.
It's kind of amazing that with investing that that historically the easiest method has also been the most consistently best performing method. And that's what I always tell my students is like, money can be very difficult. Like I actually find budgeting, like the week to week act of budgeting is a slog.
It's unpleasant.
It is unpleasant and I find it very difficult, but like conceptually it's pretty easy to pick up. Like, like you're looking at money coming in and money going out,
right.
But actually sitting down to do it is very difficult. Whereas I feel investing is the exact opposite,
yes.
where you're actually like really scared and there is a learning curve up top where you need to learn the language of investing and learn the language of money. But once you get your shit set up, that's it.
Set it and forget it.
That's all you need to do. And
yes.
you can just move on with your cute life.
Exactly. Like I just bought like a lion's share of my portfolio is in an index fund that, emulates the S&P 500 and it's just in there. I put more in there every month and don't think about it.
That's it.
Literally, that's it. And then when people are like, oh, like the guy, the cryptocurrency husband who's got scared and took all the money out, that like when people say that they struggle with that, I'm just like, first of all, don't look.
Yeah.
Like, let's start with that. Stop looking, okay? Stop looking and panicking and then touching things because now you make those losses permanent. Just leave it alone. Like, just literally leave it alone is basically my strategy, right? Like, put it in there, don't touch it, forget it exists, and then check in every now and then and be like, oh, shoot, I have more money. Yay! Exactly.
And then if you don't have more money, if the market is down, you say like, hey, this is when you buy. This is,
yes.
And not that I encourage timing the market ever, but we are in right now a very volatile period in the market, although like calling it a crash is like a little bit of an overstatement. If anybody's following along, we have had some downward volatility in the market over the course of the last month or so. But in the grand scheme of the market, it really is just a hiccup, at least right now.
Yes.
It is certainly within the bandwidth of what you would expect given the economic chaos and the uncertainty that we are experiencing right now. And it is also possible that the market continues to go down from here. But you have to remember when you're investing in you have to remember when you are investing what you are investing in, which you are investing in a proportional share of ownership in a company.
Yeah.
And it is not an appropriate investment for the next year or maybe even the next 3, 4, 5 years, because anybody who has ever run a business, which is you and a lot of the folks that are going to be listening, know that not every year is going to be a banner year. That's just not the way that it works.
Correct.
And so while profit is the engine that drives stock prices higher, we're talking about over the course of decades.
Yes.
And yet, you never, of course, if you're buying more, then you own more shares. But like when the market takes a tumble, you don't own less of that company or those companies. It's just that the market is currently valuing those shares at less. And that only tells you one thing. And what that tells you is what you could get for those shares if you sold them right now.
Right.
And
which you don't want to.
Which you don't want to.
You don't want to buy high and sell low, right? Which is what some people do because they freak out.
Well, and I think it's education, right? People don't even actually understand what they're investing in. And that is why when people say like, okay, well, what is the trick to remaining calm and cool? It's knowing exactly what you're getting yourself into. And so understanding the stock market as a thing that absolutely can be understood, not in the sense that I can tell you what's going to happen next month, but we can definitely understand why let's talk about that. Like, why does volatility happen? So prices going up and down and up and down, if you listen to, I always like to hate on Squawk Box. There is an MSNBC show called Squawk Box, which I think is the worst name who would ever want to listen to like a bunch of bald guys yelling at each other on a show called Squawk Box? But alas,
apparently people do.
It exists, but they would have you believe that one thing that happens either in the economy or politically has some like direct or unilateral impact on stock prices, right? So like, for example, a politician says XYZ and therefore stocks are down.
Yes.
But that's not the way that it works. You're missing a step. What would be more accurate to say is that this politician said XYZ, and that made people concerned, along with a million other factors that have people concerned. And so they are selling out of their stocks. And that lack of demand for stocks is the mechanism that drives prices lower.
Right.
And so an easier way to say it is it's buying and selling that pushes prices higher or lower.
Right.
And an even easier way to say it is that it's vibes, right? It's like
literally
it's vibes. And like there was a great TikToker who described the stock market as a graph of rich people's feelings. And that actually is kind of intuitive because
100%.
Because even though it is stretched over longer periods, it is profit that drives stock prices higher. The companies that are much more profitable 10 or 20 years from now are going to be the companies with higher stock prices. But in the short term, it's all this buying, selling back and forth that is causing the prices to go up and down in the market. And as you can imagine, there are millions and millions and millions of investors worldwide, not just us as individuals, but also institutions with massive amounts of money invested, hedge funds with massive amounts of money invested that are making these decisions to position themselves in the market or out of the market, in this stock or in that stock. And so what the stock market becomes in a lot of ways is like a voting mechanism where we're all kind of like voting on what we think is going to happen in the future. But here's the thing. Nobody knows.
Exactly.
Nobody knows. And so really what we see is that any sort of drama can happen in the short term with stock market prices, but that drama the market kind of shakes it off over longer periods. 10 years, I mean, we might still be talking about what's happening now in 10 years, but whatever is the thing that caused prices to go down today or yesterday in the stock market is not something that we're even going to be thinking about 10 or 20 years from now. And so
there's no reason to touch your money today necessarily, especially if it's for retirement 10 or 20 years out, right?
Exactly, right? Because what we are doing as stock market investors is, to be a successful stock market investor, I really believe that you have to believe two things, right? You got to think that these companies are going to become more profitable over time, which like, for better or worse, I think that they will.
Yes.
And then the
studies show.
And then the second piece is that you have to know that during this period of growth, it's going to be very 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the stock market will reflect not just that, but the stock market will reflect a whole lot of fears, but also desires and greed that we are experiencing all along the way. And so what you see is that, like, if you look at the graph of like company profit over time, it's a little bit more steady than if you look at the corresponding stock market performance over that same period, because
it's rich people's feelings.
Yeah, it's just people being crazy. You know what I mean?
In summary.
And we as humans, like, we can be very much herd creatures, right? Like if you hear everybody around you is panicked, then you're panicked.
Yes.
If you hear everybody around you is making buco bucks in the stock market, then you're going to want in on it. And so we kind of swell the market in both directions.
Yes.
We push it higher maybe than it needs to be at times. This is called periods of market mania, right? Like the dot-com bubble is the biggest example of this, like probably the clearest example of this. But then it also happens on the downside, right? When we get a market crash, it's not because Coca-Cola is making less money. It is because people are really scared and they're selling out of their stock market investments. But that can only go on for so long before a lot of people are like, wait a minute, Coca-Cola hasn't stopped making a shit ton of money.
Yes.
I can get that stock for cheap. And you slowly see people once the storm is past, going to buy into the stock market. And guess what that does? That pushes it back higher.
Yes.
And so that was kind of a long answer to say, like, I think just even understanding that we can know the market, but we can't predict the market. We can know why it does the things that it does to the extent that we let go of thinking that we can control it or know what's going to happen in the next year or so, which is really important to being a successful stock market investor. Like, let go, babes. Like, we cannot control this, and we can only be along for the ride. Exactly.
And look at the history to tell us, like, okay, so 8 to 10% returns on average. Great. That's what I'm going to plan on, and there's really, what other control do you have? You know what I mean?
You don't. And this is just, it's interesting because we are at a point where this is now our retirement system in the United States.
Correct.
And it is I actually think it is pretty stupid that every single individual needs to be a master of portfolio management theory. There should be collective solutions for retirement without a doubt. I mean, even just from an efficiency standpoint.
Yes.
Like every single person having to learn how to do this, that doesn't make any sense from an efficiency standpoint.
Yes.
And it also creates an environment where only those with the resources and the knowledge and the connections are the ones that are going to be able to do this, which is just not the makings for the caring society that we all deserve. But that being said, this is what we've got currently.
This is the system we get.
And it is pretty wild that, like, you know, you sign up for a 401k at work and what you don't know is that it's being invested in the stock market. And then all of a sudden you have a year like 2008 where the US stock market lose 50% of its value. It makes sense that your knee-jerk reaction would be to be like, okay, well, I actually think we should stop this now.
We should stop losing money now.
That's like not
that. It makes logical sense, but from an investing standpoint, it's the worst thing that you could do.
But it's the worst thing you could do. And like, our brains are just, they're these like, we have these big, beautiful brains that were designed to keep us alive for many eons, but they are very mismatched with the task of investing in capital markets, right? Like if we sense a threat, we're like, kill it.
Yes.
Do something, right? It's like that proverbial, mountain lion. And we are protecting our young from the mountain lion. And so when we see our portfolios, our investments, our retirement, this money that we've worked so hard for dropping in value, it really triggers like a fight or flight mechanism within us. And the impulse to do something to make it stop is actually the exact opposite of what we need in this particular context.
Yeah.
And so even just kind of addressing that within yourself and being like, I got this big, beautiful brain. It is doing its best to keep me alive, but it's not giving me the right signal in this moment.
Yes.
Because in this moment, the best action is actually inaction. And that is difficult for the brain.
Because it's not an intuitive thing.
No.
And that's why like your class and education around this is so critical. And I've started talking about investing more with my clients and like directing them to people who know more than me on this topic, because it is so critical that like we make this part of our strategy, but we have to know it, right? So that we can figure it out. So like, what is one piece of advice that you would give that you weren't giving before about investing under this Trump administration? Is there anything in particular that you've changed your stance on, or just a thing people should be aware of investing?
Yeah, great
right
question.
Now?
So I have long been a proponent of taking an internationally diversified approach.
Yes, and I actually feel the same way. Yes, 100%.
And it has been something that has been difficult to teach for the last 10 years because US has absolutely slaughtered international performance-wise.
Yes.
And so, of course, it's been longer than 10 years. It's been closer to 15, almost 20 years that US has significantly outperformed other markets.
Yes.
Specifically European markets and other developed nations. But I am somebody who has long been, I guess you could say, suspicious of the American experiment,
to say the least.
And that did not start with Trump.
Yeah.
And so for me, I am somebody that it's not that I've seen the writing on the wall, but you look at the historical data of the stock market, and what you see is that different regions do better during different time periods, right?
Yeah.
In the 80s, Japan did the best. In the 90s, it was US. In the 2000s, it was Europe. And since then, it has been US again. And we weren't even talking about the potential fall of an empire here. We were just talking about kind of the way that lanes of traffic move over time, where this one speeds up for, a period, sometimes like a decade, and then this one speeds up for like a decade. And it nothing lasts forever. And so knowing that throughout the last 10 years and just knowing that we at any point might see this other lane of traffic take off, I have long encouraged folks to, at the very least, diversify outside of the U.S. stock
Yes.
market. And so just to give people...
I think there's a very strong argument for that
to be
now.
made. And so I'm feeling very high and mighty because I've always taught this.
Like, I told y'all.
But if you've only been doing something like a U.S. stock market index fund, whether that's S&P 500 or it's a total U.S. stock market index fund, no worries. You've done amazing. Your performance has been amazing. But this is a great time to reevaluate whether we might be wanting to diversify outside of the United States. Even this year, whereas the U.S. stock market is down a bit, European stocks have taken off. And so it's hard to know. We do not know moving forward if this is the actual end of an empire, or if this is just going to be a blip on the radar.
Right.
And so much of like the US's best discourse over the last 20 years has really validated people's feelings about a US only strategy. And so I just encourage people to remember, like, yes, when you invest in any category, right? Like whether it's the US or anything, you do give yourself the chance of returning, of course, whatever is the average performance of that category. And so if you stick to a US only strategy, maybe it continues to be the best performing asset class. That is possible, but
maybe not.
Right? But by not diversifying, you are not giving yourself the protection if the worst happens within that category.
Yes.
Because these two things cannot be true at the same time. You cannot have the returns of the best performing category and diversification. You can't have both of those things.
Yes, that's such a good point.
And so it depends. Like if you feel confident going all in on the US, right? Maybe even for somebody like you, Rachel, where you've got real estate, you've got your business, you have diversification already built into your strategy. That is something that you can explore. But for somebody that's maybe just starting out and building the majority of their wealth via the stock market, somebody like me who really concentrates a lot of her wealth in the stock market, it's probably worth, right, even kind of using this like different pots overflowing imagery to consider at least integrating some international stocks, which you can very easily do via an index fund, like with the US stock market, where you're just kind of investing across the whole market, saying, hey, I'm not trying to pick the best stocks, I'm just along for the ride. And so doing international, and then, you can potentially look to add some bonds as well. For anybody that has not seen a visual of a typical or recommended investment strategy, generally it looks just kind of like a pie graph, and there's just really three categories. There's US stocks, there's international stocks, there's bonds.
Yes.
Now that's not to say that there are not other investment types, right? There is crypto, there is real estate, but especially when we're talking about inside of a retirement account like a 401k or a Roth IRA, those are really the three categories that we're talking about.
Yes.
And so US is generally considered to be the most essential piece, US stock market. I would argue that international is also an essential piece. And then if you want to add some bonds for a more of like a cycle, like they're going to provide less returns over time, but they're not going to be as volatile. And so that's, to me, is a bit more of like a psychological cushion piece that you can have integrated into your strategy.
I'm team no bonds.
Yeah,
but that's just because I'm ambitious. Yeah. Well, and I'm okay with a little more risk, and I also, and
you've got your other investments.
Exactly. But I have definitely been thinking about buying real estate overseas, investing in more funds that are overseas, right? Like just being like, if this ship goes down, I don't want to go down with it 100%, right? You're definitely going to lose something, but like, I don't know, could we go somewhere else, So y'all, I mean, obviously you are the most knowledgeable, most relatable, and aligned values-wise person I know to learn investing from. So I highly, highly recommend that you take Amanda's course, Invested Development, and you can take her class at ROI. She is going to be teaching you about investing at ROI, the Millionaire Summit in June. So we will see you there.
I can't wait to see you in June.
Yes, exactly. Is there anything else that you want to share with people?
No, come find me if you want to learn more. I'm at Dumpster.Doggy on Instagram and TikTok, and I would love for you to be my student.
Yes, and then you can see all her trashion.
Yes, this is Trashion.
Yes. And so just tell me real quick, like how do you, tell me the Trashion strategy.
I think the real truth to the Trashion strategy is just like not actually giving that big of a shit as to like what I'm wearing at any given time. Like I just like when I shop for clothes, I like it to be a treasure hunt, and I pull stuff I like. If I don't find anything, I don't buy it, and I just don't take it that seriously.
Yes.
And so that's kind of my secret is not taking it super seriously. But yes, I got this from one of my favorite vintage stores in Brooklyn. It's called Le Grand Strip. Shout out to Cece who runs it. This was actually her top.
I love it. Yes. My niece has been teaching me all about thrifting. First of all, I was like, girl, I've been thrifting since I was 17.
Yeah.
Okay. I will tell you a thing or two about thrifting. And where did I used to do it? On the Upper East Side with all the rich ladies. I would get fabulous stuff. Yes. Just so cheap. It was like, it is a treasure hunt. It makes it really fun, actually.
Yeah.
You know, and then also you have something one of a kind.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's more fun this way.
Exactly. I love it. All right. Thank you for joining us. Go check out Amanda and follow her at Dumpster.Doggy on Instagram. You will be very entertained and you will learn things. Okay. So you can't lose. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.
You want to make more money? You are in the right place. Welcome to the Hello 7 podcast. That's 7 as in 7 figures. I'm your host, Rachel Rogers.